This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Lynda Kinkade. We have more now on that initial victory in CNN's lawsuit over press access to the White House. Our correspondent Jessica Schneider joins me from outside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. And this is certainly a victory for CNN, but also a victory for freedom of the press.
Well, that's exactly what the American Civil Liberties Union is saying as well, Lynda, that this is a victory for all journalists. And they said that today's decision reaffirms that no one is above the law, including the president. Now, inside the court, it was a very short and succinct hearing. But the judge, putting it simply here, he said, I rule now that I demand that the White House immediately reinstate Jim Acosta's press pass. Now, this is a press pass that allows Jim Acosta, the chief White House correspondent for CNN, access to the White House on a daily basis. It allows him access to the press areas and to the officials who are making the decisions or disseminating decisions and policy. This is an important win for CNN, but as many have put it, this is also an important win for all journalists. So what happened in this ruling here is the judge had to decide whether or not to grant an emergency order for CNN. This emergency order would reinstate Jim Acosta's hard pass. This is a limited ruling, and the judge made clear to stress that. He did not rule whether or not Jim Acosta's First Amendment rights were violated. He didn't rule on the government's argument that the First Amendment doesn't really apply at the White House. None of that was ruled on today. What was ruled on is that the judge said that by Jim Acosta's hard pass being revoked in such a quick manner, announced on Twitter the day after the midterm elections, that Jim Acosta just didn't have the due process rights that were needed to enact this type of measure here. So because of that, the judge says that the hard pass needs to be reinstated. Litigation will move forward. The White House will decide whether or not to continue fighting this. But in the interim, Jim Acosta will be allowed back into the White House with his pass reinstated. The judge making it very clear in a very limited ruling here that the White House needs to let him back in and didn't give him the proper notice or due process that he should have had if this sort of measure was to be taken. Lynda?
Right. So just to clarify, this is round one, the first step. If this proceeds, then the next effort would be to get that permanent relief, which could impact other journalists, other news organizations facing similar retaliation from the White House.
Well, exactly. This is the first step here. And this is an important step because in this motion for a temporary restraining order, CNN here had to prove that it was likely to succeed if this case went further. And the judge here said, at least on the due process claims, that CNN, Jim Acosta, they were likely to succeed here. So usually when you're granted a temporary restraining order, which happened just a few minutes ago, that indicates that you are likely to succeed in this entire case, at least on the due process claim. So what the White House has to decide here is if they'll continue. The Justice Department lawyers that were inside the courtroom, they said we need to confer with the White House to decide how exactly we want to move forward here. It's quite possible that the White House doesn't want to move forward here. You know, litigation could continue on this First Amendment claim, and that would be a much broader issue here as to whether or not Jim Acosta's First Amendment rights were violated. But yes, for now, a limited ruling here, but a very important ruling that Jim Acosta will get to go back to work, as he put it, as he stepped outside the courthouse, will be able to get back into the White House, and the White House itself needs to reinstate his hard pass. Lynda?
That is great news for Jim Acosta. All right, Jessica Schneider, thanks so much. I want to bring in our Brian Stelter from New York now. Brian, we heard from Jim Acosta just moments ago, thanking everyone for their support. And this really did have the support of pretty much every media organization in the country, including even the largest right-wing leaning organization, Fox News.
Yes, this is one of the very rare cases of rivals in the news industry all being on the same side, all being on the side of press access and freedom. CNN's just issued a statement in the past couple of minutes thanking other news outlets for their support. The CNN statement says, "We are gratified with this result, and we look forward to a full resolution in the coming days. Our sincere thanks to all who have supported not just CNN, but a free, strong, and independent American press." The ACLU and other groups are also coming out out celebrating this decision, even though, as Jessica said, it is a limited ruling. It is a ruling that is a victory for CNN and for these other news outlets, because after all, this is about Acosta today, but the concern is that other reporters could be blacklisted in the future, that it's Acosta today and it could be the New York Times or NBC tomorrow, Fox News or the AP next week. That's been the concern in newsrooms across the country. And the other thing about this ruling is that it's also being noticed in state houses, at city councils, in newsrooms all across America, because yes, this is about the White House, but it also sets a tone. Tone always starts from the top. President Trump's attacks against the press are ceaseless, but today a federal court ruled in favor of the press, supporting permissive access to the White House grounds.
Excellent. Brian Stelter for us in New York. Great news. Thanks so much for covering that. Thanks also to Jessica Schneider outside the courthouse in Washington. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with a whole other hour of news.